We've got this amazing app right here, and so we want to talk about what is it going to take to make something like this happen. As you can see, we've got this cute little clicking effect. We have some rotation. We have some text on here. They change as we click. You can see there's numbers being tracked. And so we want to talk about what is it going to take to make something like this happen? How can I identify where things need to go based on this? So we can see there's stuff in here. So we want to go ahead and take a look at what is it going to do? What do we need to do to actually make this happen? What kind of code makes something like this happen? So let's go ahead and let's break this down in the associated pieces that go to make a SwiftUI app work. Let's go take a look at the SwiftUI code itself. So we have our code right here. We're inside my demo view.swift. And so if I go ahead and open up my navigation window really quick, and we take a look at the folder, you can see I've got my regular structure for my project. I've got a controller folder. I have my app.swift, which has the main inside it, which we don't have to really worry about. We just make it and we leave it alone. We have our demo view, which is all the code is going to go. And in our resources folder, we've moved our assets.exe assets and our info.plist file. And that's great. So let's go ahead though. Let's take a look at the actual demo view.swift. As you can see right here, we have our preview window pane open, or preview pane open, and we can see what's on that. And this is a really helpful way to identify what we're actually working with and the pieces we're doing, especially as we go along with this. But let's take a look at the actual demo view, what we're doing to make this app happen. So we have to put everything in Swift in structs. And so a struct is the unit of, it's our structure, obviously the first, structure, I know. But a struct is what holds the pieces together. Each of the views we work with in SwiftUI, and we're making a SwiftUI app, is a struct. So each component we're playing with is a struct. In fact, when we look at that body right here, that's what we're making is some view. And so this is also a view. So all these things are the same kind of thing. We're putting these pieces together to make that happen. Now, the first thing we want to take a look at when we're talking about this new app is we have our data members, the stuff that actually makes this up. Now, using what we've got right here, these are the data that we're tracking that we're going to manipulate inside the actual app that we're keeping track of as a state value. And again, we're using that state value again, like I mentioned in the other video, because we want to be able to have some information we can track and use across the UI. The user interface, we want to be able to track that because as a struct, when we're doing that inside Swift, you get copies of them. And in order to maintain that internalness, that the state, I know that at state, that's where it comes from. That property wrapper, we use that property wrapper, the at state in front of that variable. So we know that we want to track it for what we're looking at right here. That's something we're looking inside it. So it's a nice little reminder to the code and to us, this is important, we want to track it. And so we have right here, we have some variables. We have our count, scalar, rotate, options, and random index. So the count obviously is just exactly that. It's a count. And you can see right here, that count is listed in there. That's probably that 0 is right there. A scalar, to scale something is to make it get bigger or smaller based on something like that. And right now it's a double set to 1.01. So we have a value attached to that scalar. Rotate, rotate, we rotate. Okay, that makes sense. Options. Now this one's probably not the least best named component inside that, but it's some options we can put inside that. So like, what do we want to display? You can see right now I have that cute little alien right there, and that's the first thing inside that array or that list in Swift right here. And that's the first thing, and then we have a whole bunch of different options we can put that we're populating that array or that list with. And that we're starting off with just the first one in there, the cute little purple alien. And then random index starts off at 0, which links, of course, to that first one in there. So even though we haven't even seen any of the code, random index starting at 0, and that's that purple alien right here, and we can see that right there, we have an idea of what's on there. The next thing we do is let's look at the actual app itself. So we're looking at this app. We can see that we have a button right here. It's the click. It's that lovely blue highlight, that hyperlink approach we see in all of our Swift apps or iOS apps. That's a quick way right there. And we have some text right here so we can see some text components. So before we do anything in there, we have stuff that's happening. Now, as you can see, I've collapsed all of my code that we're working with right here. And in all SwiftUI apps, everything comes down to you have that struct that you're working with, whichever view you're on, and a required variable. Because of this view protocol that we're conforming to right here, is you have to have a var body that conforms to some view. You have to have this inside your view. Okay, so we know that that's what's going to hold all our pieces. So anything that we're putting to display in the app has to go inside this var body. That's what the view protocol requires. And that var body has to be a view type. So it has to conform to some type of view. What type of view? Don't even worry about that. That's not the point. It just has to be something we can put in there. And so we've used things like buttons. We've done simple things with text. We've also used the magic power of the combining stack effect and forms for some of our other apps. And that's what that is. It's just anything we can put inside there, that goes inside the body because the body holds what we're looking at. Kind of like a body element on an HTML page even. Yeah, okay. We have a private function called update. It's a return void. We'll worry about that later because we don't need to even stress about that right now. But the update method is the action that gets performed for something. So the first thing we want to do is when we collapse out this body, you can see that there's a zstack. So a zstack, again, is when we're putting things from back to front. And so in the zstack, it goes to the back of the screen, closer up to the front of the screen. The further down you get inside that zstack, the closer to you, the user, it shows up. So when I expand that out, I can see that I have a text on here. And that text has an options of subrandom index. That's where I get that cute little alien. And so that's at the back of the screen. That's behind my head, basically. So it's like having this cute little calendar piece right here. That's behind my head, and then there's my head in front of it. And that's the kind of approach we're looking with right there. And then we had some modifications on there. We'll talk about that again in a bit. That's not the important part right now. So we have the text, and we have in front of the text, we have a vstack. And that vstack, you can see we have a vertical stack of some text and a button. And if I unclick this one and I expand it out, hey, look, there's a text and a button. And so you can see right there, we're using that right there. And so the first thing we have is we have inside that first text, we have options, sub-random index. And that's saying I'm going to use the state information of options and random index so I can talk to these different components so I can change what goes inside that cute little space back here. On top of that, I have the effects we're working with the font, the rotation, and 3D effect. Take a look at the video for the Silly app. You can see the logic and how that works, but we don't have to go into detail on that right now. Then we have our vstack. That's what's going in front of it. And in front of that, we have a text. And that text is the \parens count. So again, I'm using that new state variable for count right here. And that shows that a 0 right there is inspected right that. And then finally, I have my button, and it has the text click, and its action parameter says to call update, that method we have right here. And so that means anything we want to do, those actions we're going to perform would happen inside this update method. And that's what we have right here. So actions, things we want to have happen, those happen in methods. And those methods, of course, will be called usually when a button event something is clicked on that. And so when we're using a event-based system like we have right here with using the button action update, this method right here needs to be a void type method. It needs to have no parameters. This is the requirement from we're calling it inside SwiftUI to make it so it makes the full conform to the structure. That's what it's expecting, is not to have any information sent to it. And so we just say private func update. If you need to send parameters or do other information to send to call other methods, those will get called and sent inside this method itself. Makes it really easy so you can make the first method that you're calling from the button action, make it quick and simple. Just give it a name like update or change or do this stuff or perform actions or whatever you want that button to do. And then inside there, say for example, you want to do something more than simply just update the count, the scale, and the rotate factors. If you want to do some more complex actions, those would get called by methods that refer to those parameters right there, because you could call that up, retrieve the information, and return it back into it and do some cool stuff with that. And because these are state variables, any changes that get made to them can be reflected over here inside the user interface. And so that update method, we'll go ahead and collapse it back out because we don't need to go in detail on that. It's just a method that gets called every time I click the button. Now, because I have that lovely preview here, every time I click the button, you can see what's happening inside that. And so it's causing it to rotate, to flip, and go around. My count number goes up, my rotation effect happens, and all that happens because the changes that are happening here inside the update. If I make changes to that, it would reflect these changes over here accordingly. So again, just a quick review. When you're making a SwiftUI app, what we have to do is we want to look about what the pieces we're going to need. Those visual pieces, the pieces that make up the actual user interface, those are the body elements. They go inside the body variable. And you put all those together using usually a vstack is the most common thing, as well as some zstacks or vstacks as well. And so you put, or hstacks for horizontal. And so you put those stacks inside here, you put all different components because your body can have one whole thing. In this case, it has one zstack. Inside the body, you get one thing, and you can have as many things inside that basically as you want, basically up to 10 easily. And so that zstack right here has two things inside it. It has a text and a vstack. That vstack also has two things inside it. I could nest that even further, 10 things in that, which has 10 things in that, and go all the way down. But again, make it easy, make it usable, and we can have that work really well. You can take a look at the data app video where we can see more dynamic data because we're loading hundreds of things at a time or thousands of things at a time. But all it actually has is that one piece of thing that loads right there, and then it loads them over and over again as necessary. And we'll see how we can do that again. But again, when we're talking about putting together a SwiftUI app, the state information is information we need to keep track of to show what's inside the actual view, what we're working with. The body itself is a required variable. It's where we put all the pieces, the stuff we're working with. And we then put the pieces inside there based on what we're doing. We can also use the inspector. So if I open up my inspector pane and I go over here inside my body, if I go to that fourth one option right here, Alt Command 4, the attributes inspector, you can see the different attributes that are affected inside this. And I can click on here and I can see, oh, here's the modifiers that are affecting this. So if I click on my vstack right here, my vstack has no modifications on it. My button has no modifications on it, but I can add modifiers over here to that based on what we're working with. This text right here has a bunch of modifiers. It has a rotation effect. It has a rotation 3D effect. It has a font using system size. Those are information, that's information that it has already within it. And so I can put those things there. I can even add more by using that add modifier. But that's just stuff that I add on top of those elements. And that happens over here in the attributes inspector. That's on the Alt-Command-0 window access, and we can access that easily when we have the preview pane open. But that's all we have to do to make a quick little app. And again, that's what we're doing. If we're making an app, we want to identify the pieces we want to do, then identify where the changes need to happen. Changes always happen inside methods, and if it's going to be a change that's going to be reflected inside the user interface, we want to make sure those changes have a reference to those @state property wrappers so we can make those changes happen. And that's the quick little demo we want to go for. Thanks again. Have a great day. Cheers.